What's up guys, AkkiVGC, and we are back here today with ITL playoffs. We've got a very exciting match between two of my close friends. We've got Matty versus Aki in round one of the playoffs, which is pretty wild considering Matty had an undefeated season and still didn't make that first round bye that went to AkkiVGC, who also had a 10-0 season. So we did cut the season short, so that's why both players in the same conference managed to go undefeated. Had it been a 13-week season, obviously one of them would have had to face, so one of their undefeated seasons would have ended. But Matty ended up having a slightly lower differential than Sebi. Still had a great diff, but he's going to end up facing Aki here in the semis, in the round one of playoffs. Now I've got both of these guys' teams. They sent them in to me, so I've got a bit of background information on you know, each of the sets we've got here, and it's looking to be a really exciting game. So I'm just going to tell them that I'm ready, and they can jump into it. So yeah, alrighty, let's get into it. So on Matty's team, you see he's got the Gallade, the Cart, the Lele, the Rotom, the Ferret, and the Fisk. So this is a bulky SD Gallade, I believe. It's adamant. It's not very fast. It's a Scarfed Katana. It's a Specs Lele, Defog Rotom. It's Mental Herb, Ferrothorn, and then it's a Shukaberry Stunfisk, I believe. And Aki, on the other hand, he's got a Unaware Clef, a Trick, Scarf, Frostlass. This is a Sash Mamoswine. He's got Weakness Policy, Autonomize, Selly, 4 attacks, Mega Arrow, and a really heat Sub Torment Hydra. So this is, yeah, really interesting start to this game. So both players getting their rocks up turn one. It's going to be interesting to see if Aki chooses to preserve the Sash on Mamo, but maybe expecting Rotom to defog later in the game, because Aki's got dual hazards, but Matty only has one form of hazards here, and he's got the defog on Rotom. So, but Aki does choose to just go for the EQ here, getting damage off, as he does break Ferro's, as Matty does break Mamo's Sash there, and yeah, Aki gets a nice 38 off on the Ferro, which is going to be pretty nice for his Clefable in the late game, as well as Aero. He doesn't have to worry about missing, but he's going to preserve that and go into his Hydra, which is pretty clean. That does a lot to Hydra. That does 51. But yeah, he might choose to sub here. I know he's sub Roost Torment. No, he's sub. I think he's Taunt Roost Torment and Dark Pulse. But it's a pretty heat Hydra set, and he should be able to come out of this exchange with either a dead Ferro or at least damage on something else if Matty wants to switch into something like Gallade or Lele here, expecting the fire attack. This is interesting though. I think the fact that Aki's kept Mamo in the back as Death Fodder could be really nice to sack something off versus Katana and bring in something like Selly. So, but yeah, Matty's also in a great spot here with a pretty healthy Ferro, which is going to be useful for Clef if he does decide to preserve it. But yeah, this is kind of a wild game already. I think that Gyro did a little bit more than Aki was expecting. I think he meant to cancel that turn, but it didn't go through quick enough. But yeah, both guys just thinking a bit here. Looking at Matty's win cons, like Cart definitely looks solid. Scarfed Sacred Sword can't sweep with a Scarfed Frostlass in the back though, which is something to keep in mind. And we do see Torment. We see Torment go off, but Mental Herb was able to actually bypass that. But so had Matty gone for the Gyro Ball there, Torment would have failed. But the fact that he went for Toxic really just kind of made that play null and void. But yeah, great prep. Obviously, I think both players had great prep there. Like Torment, great prep for this Ferro. But Toxic with the Mental Herb there really came in clutch for Matty, as Dark Pulse is going to get the flinch. That is going to be rough. That is going to be rough for this Ferro. He's going to be put very low if Aki says in the chat that he's going to click Torment, because Matty Matty got the because Matty got the flinch there. But we'll see if Matty wants him to make that play. Either way, this Pharaoh is pretty low, even if he does sack off the Hydra here. Pharaoh's pretty low. The clef is Fire Blast. It's a defensive clef. It's a defensive unaware clef with Carmine, Moonblast, and Fire Blast. So that's actually looking really nasty. I think it'd be a huge win con in this game. But of course, Cart is definitely pressuring that thing with Smart Strike, which Matty has, I believe. So yeah, Aki's going to be a gentleman here and sack his Hydra off to to the toxic damage after subbing up, because he did get a Dark Pulse flinch, and obviously Pharaoh there would have killed his Hydra with the Garable if he hadn't got flinch there. So yeah, good sportsmanship here early in the game. And the fact that Pharaoh's low is pretty nice for Aki's team. He doesn't have to worry about. That's one less thing that really can chew a hit from Aerodactyl, and yeah, revenge it with Garable. So it's a pretty interesting spot. I know Aki's Aero has Ice Fang over Earthquake, so the Shukaberry Stunfisk isn't going to be as great a check to that as Matty may expect, but Ice Fang will be doing a decent chunk. I mean, it's Tough Claws boosted, as he does bring it in here. He does bring in the arrows, so this is interesting because Rotom obviously can come in on arrows, either EQ or Fire Fang, and if he does make that kind of play, Aki might make the wild predict of going for Stone Edge, predicting the Rotom to come in, but I feel like Matty can pretty much sack off this Pharaoh here. He doesn't really need to keep it around. It's kind of done its job already. It's got up rocks. It's pretty much killed Mamo, and it's killed the Hydra. So yeah, I think Aki really needed to preserve. I think he said in the chat that he meant to cancel. He didn't mean to go into Hydra on turn 2 or something like that. So I think he really would have appreciated having Hydra around for Stunfisk and Rotom. So that might hurt him in the end game, as well as having a Psychic immunity, because this Lele is Specs like I mentioned. So I think preserving his Psychic immunity would have been pretty important, because now Specs Psychic pretty much claims one. We know the Celesteela is bulky, but it's weakness pulse here. It's not lefty, so that's going to be it's not really a switch in, as he does go for the Fire Fang here, and he's going to take out the Pharaoh. So by going Aero here, Aki keeps his cards kind of close to his chest. He doesn't reveal that Celesteela is an offensive variant. He doesn't reveal that Clef has Fire Blast. So these are all kind of important factors. Factors to consider, I guess. Going Aero was fine there, and it got his Mega off early, which is going to allow it to potentially switch in and take a hit a little bit easier. But honestly, coming in on rocks, he's not really going to be able to switch on anything, to be honest. He's OHKO'd by actually everything that Matty could any attack that Matty could possibly go for. So yeah, this is it's pretty interesting so far. Definitely Scarfed Frostlass is actually really solid win con here from Aki's side. If he can weaken the Rotom, Scarfed Frostlass looks pretty nice actually in the end game. Shadow Ball, Ice Beam, pretty solid win cons here. Being able to outspeed Scarf Katana could be huge as well, but also on the other side of that, you know, Matty's Specs Lele has no switch-ins. Rotom is definitely a roadblock if he can stay healthy. He is Citrus Berry as well, so it's going to be even harder for his team to wear down. But, you know, Carmine, Unaware Clef could be a bit of a hindrance to Matty's card as well. So just going to open up Matty's team and take a look at his sets again to refresh my memory. He is a really fat Adamant SD Gallade, which is kind of checked by the Clefable, but he is actually Destiny Bond on that, so that could be a really interesting way that he takes out the Clefable, opening up stuff like his Katana a little bit easier. And if in fact he does choose to sacrifice his Aerodactyl off to the Stunfisk to get damage, it might actually end up being in range of something like his Celesteela, which is something to consider. But yeah, I think Matty taking a bit of time to choose how he wants to take on this Aero. Of course, like bringing in Cart here is the most offensive play, and It does pretty much net him a kill, but or at least damage off on the Selly if Akki doesn't choose to sack off his Mamu here, but at the same time going Rotom might be his play of choice, or even the Stunfisk there. Knowing that Stunfisk can take any hit, and it's essentially just here for the arrow and the Selly. Rotom performing is a pretty nice Celesteela check as well, and I think both have T-Wave on their sets. I know Stunfisk is packing T-Wave here. The Rotom is not packing T-Wave. It's Hydro Volt Switch, Hidden Power Flying in default. I think Hidden Power Flying's there just for the Chestnut that Akki could potentially bring. He brought a sub Belly Drum Chestnut to his previous game, and it ended up just cleaning up. So I think Matty definitely wanted to prepare for that, knowing that Akki was going to bring some fire. So he does bring in his Scarf Katana, and I don't think Akki has any reason to stay in here. He's pretty much free to sack off the Mamu here to rocks, preventing Kart from getting a Beast Boost, and it will allow him to either go into his Frostlass or out into his Celesteela here, so should be pretty interesting. As he does choose to sack off Mamu, which I think is definitely the right play there, as he does reveal Smart Strike. So this kind of implies that Matty is scarfed. Either that or he's just the Bluff Lord, and we see Matty does bring out the Selly here, so it's going to be interesting because we know this thing is autotomize. Obviously Matty doesn't know that, he's got to respect the defensive bring, but yeah, he's definitely he's a really bulky fat Selly with three attacks. He's Acrobatics, Earthquake, Flamethrower, so it's pretty interesting coverage because it won't allow him to hit the Rotom, so he does need to get chip off on that Rotom, but if he can chip that makes Aerodactyl a bigger threat in the late game, as well as Frostlass. Like, any damage off on the Rotom allows Frostlass to clean up this end game a bit better, but it's yeah, Rotom is a real hindrance to this Celesteela. But as far as Matty's concerned, this could be, you know, Z Grass, not a Z Energy Ball, so that's something he has to keep in mind. But we probably will see him switch out to Stunfisk. I think that's probably Matty's best play, just because Stunfisk, like, Stunfisk is a better Celesteela response. It's fat enough to take a Z Energy Ball, and it's less useful than Rotom is in this endgame, factoring in like a Scarf Frostlass, which Matty has to fear. So yeah, this is a tough spot for Akki. I think yeah, not having a way to hit Rotom would be pretty tough. But of course, Matty has to expect that he might have that. But yeah, Akki's Clef is looking pretty nice. Like, you can always bring that Clef in versus either Rotom or Stunfisk. And Fire for Moonblast, nothing really appreciates switching into that. His Lele can always come in and just claim one with Psychic, but any damage off on that is going to be really nice for Frostlass. So we'll see here. Akki's definitely thinking about his play. We got some shit talker in the chat. Alright, so he does actually bring in, he brings in Gallade here on Akki's double into Clef, so that was a really good play. Really good play. So Clef covered any switch that Matty could make there, and obviously Matty didn't want to risk his Scarf card. Gallade was a really nice play as it covered the Energy Ball. It covered most plays that Akki could make there, but it didn't cover the play into Clef. So that's going to be really solid for Akki here. As far as I'm aware, this is Dual Stab SD Destiny Bond on this Gallade here. So whilst Zen Headbutt is going to be doing a shitload to the Clef, it's not going to be. I don't believe it will be 2KOing the Clef. No, it will not be 2KOing the Clef. That's a Medicham level of strength, and Gallade just doesn't hit that, unfortunately, for Matty. So this is a defensive, like a bold Clef. So yeah, he should be able to chew a Zen Headbutt fairly well, and I think firing off Moonblast is just his best play. I mean, he can like Moonlight is a really safe, like conservative defensive play here, and I don't think he has to make it. I think getting damage off is more essential here, because any damage is going to make it easier for Celestealer and Frostlass to beat this Gallade in the end game. But from Matty's perspective, he might just opt to go into either Rotom or Stunfisk here, or even go into Lele, knowing it can shoot any hit. I think Lele is probably his best play, because Lele can shoot anything, and it gets off a big Psychic. But he does just go for the Zen, as Aki is going to get flinched, which really sucks, because he was going to fire off a Moonblast there, more than likely I'd say, and get big damage off on this Gallade. So that's very unfortunate. He's kind of forced to Moonlight here, so I don't know if they're gonna like. I don't think they're gonna like replay that turn, just because the flinch earlier versus the Hydra. Like, I don't know. I don't know how they're gonna do this. Aki says it's all good in the chat, so I don't think the game's gonna be affected by that. But that definitely, yeah, that was definitely unfortunate for Aki, because he would have got at least 50% off on this Gallade. Gallade is very bulky, and it's max HP, so it wouldn't have died to that, but he would have taken a lot of damage. And now Matty's got some solid information about this Clef spread. He knows that it's defensive. He knows that it can easily chew a Zen. As you saw there, it only did 37. So, yeah, how he chooses to play this is going to be interesting. It's looking like it's going to 2 KO after lefties from this range. So Aki might choose the Moonlight up, or he might just fire off a Moonblast here, wanting to get the damage. But I feel like Clef is pretty important. Clef is... I mean, now would be a good time, honestly, for Matty to go into Lele, because the Moonlight is a pretty fair play from Aki's perspective. Yeah, Lele, that's what I'm saying. Like, he goes into Lele here as he Moonlights up. Yep, and now he clicks Spec Psychic. So that Moonblast really sucked. I hope that doesn't end up costing... Like, I hope that doesn't end up influencing the game in a big way, because yeah, that'd be really unfortunate to see. But you know, as yeah, Spec Psychic is going to claim a kill here. Defensive Fizz-Def Clef just drops to Spec Psychic, and yeah, that's really... If Aki wants to go into Selly here, it can take a Psychic, okay, but this is a modest Specs. It's not going to be taking it too well. And Matty has great counterplay to Celestealer and the Rotom and the Stunfisk, so this could be really big here. The reason why I say that is because if Clef got the Moonblast damage off on there, then Frostlass would be in an amazing spot in the same game with Scarf Ice Beam or Scarf Shadow Ball respectively, because Gallade would be in range, but obviously that's not the case here. So you see Clef live on a Slither, which is pretty amazing that it lived that. I know Matty's not like max special attack modest, but he's got quite a lot of special attack on his Lele, as that Moonblast damage is going to be pretty important, because I believe now after Rocks, this Lele is going to guarantee drop to Shadow Ball, so that's going to be pretty important. Although Lele did chew that Moonblast pretty nicely, it only did 31, so yeah, this is definitely like invested Lele. Matty's got a decent amount of HP on it. He's got he has let me see, yeah, he's got 156 HP, so he's got some bulk on it, and he does get the special attack drop here, so this may allow Aki to make the switch out into Selly, and honestly I think that would be a fine play to make, because that would allow him to preserve this unaware Clef as Rocks fodder, which would ensure that Cart doesn't get a beast boost, and would pretty much give him a free Frostlass when Cart comes in next, and Frostlass clicks Shadow Ball or Ice Beam and just puts a chip on anything that wants to switch in, so it might be worth it for Aki to just preserve this Clef as death fodder and go out into his Selly, and it's going to take a decent amount, but from Calx, Aki would recognize that is a Specs Lele, so at -1 it's just going to be a neutral Lele, so that's pretty nice for Selly. We'll be able to take the hit better, but it's still going to do a decent chunk, so it's going to be interesting to see how Aki plays this out. But yeah, Scarf Frostlass, he does just sack off the Clef here, so there you go. Scarf Frostlass looking decent in this endgame. Of course, Gallade is still at pretty much full, so that's going to be tough for Aki to combat. He's now lost his Gallade switch in, so yeah, it's going to be a really interesting endgame. Aero is still looking like a threat. The only real counterplay that Matty has from an offensive standpoint is his Scarf Katana, and defensively he has the Rotom and the Stunfisk, but any damage off on those is just putting them further in range of Frostlass, so it's going to be interesting to see how Matty chooses to play around that. Rotom's Citrus Berry could really come in clutch here in this endgame, so yeah, this is definitely a tense game as he does go into Frostlass, so I guess he just wants to bring this in and start clicking Shadow Ball here, which is a respectable play. This Lele should definitely drop, considering Frostlass is invested and Shadow Ball's super effective, so yeah, this should do a good amount. He may well go out to Rotom here, or even Fisk. I think Fisk is also a fine play, but Rotom's a bit nicer in the sense that he has the Citrus Berry and he doesn't have to worry about a super effective Ice Beam following up from a Shadow Ball here if this isn't a Scarfed Frostlass. So the way Aki's played this Frostlass though, it sort of implies it's Scarfed. Like if this was a lead Sash Frostlass, he probably would have led with it. He might actually, like, he might make the Spikes play here, which would be kind of unnecessary. But Spikes would put stuff like Gallade in range. It would put his Stunfisk further in range of Aero. A super aggressive play. I don't know if he makes that play, to be honest, because Lele can't outspeed Aero. It can't outspeed this, and yeah. So had he gone for Spike there, he would have just lost his Frostlass to Lele. I think they both made the correct play. Matty had no real reason to preserve the Lele at that point. It had broken through Aki's team sufficiently, and on the off chance that Aki did make some kind of sub play or a Spike play or something like that, Matty would have been in a tough spot there as he switched out to something to take a hit. So yeah, both players playing this really well. This is a good game of Mons despite the flinches. Definitely a good game so far. It's hard to pick a winner. I think just purely from the kind of bulk that Matty has in this endgame, I kind of think he's in a slightly better position as his Gallade is at full up that flinch, and his Rotom still has a Citrus Berry, and yeah, his Rotom and Stunfisk haven't hit the field, so I think he's probably in a better, like, his defensive Mons match up really well versus Matty's offense. Versus Aki's offense, I should say, but Aki still has a chance to bring this back, you know, with this Scarf Frostlass here. So, and every time, you know, Aero's scared out by the card, he always has Selly in the back to bring in, and if he Sacred Swords, then Frostlass just comes in and clicks Shadow Ball. So yeah, this is a really interesting endgame. It's gonna be we're only 14 turns in, but things have just been dropping. Yeah, I'm still surprised that Clefable lived that Psychic. That had to be a roll, I guess. Potentially, but you know, Clef's pretty fat, as he does bring in the Gallade here, so he knows that. This is interesting. He knows that his Gallade can live a Scarf Psychic, I'm sure, and this is why that flinch versus the Clef was potentially pretty rough for Aki there. So. We're gonna see. Unfortunately, yeah, that does not take out the Gallade at all. Don't know if that was the correct play from Aki's part. I think preserving Frostlass was his way of guaranteed checking the Katana, but yeah. Aki just says in the chat the Moonblast damage would be nice, but good play from Matty as well, because yeah. Gallade forced pressure on everything. Had he gone into card, he couldn't have gone into card. Had he gone into something like Rotom or Stunfisk, they both would have forced out Frostlass, but Gallade guarantees the most damage on anything that wants to switch in. If he'd gone into a Selly, he would have taken a Zen Headbutt into a close combat, which would have essentially neutered it and allowed Cart to get a kill. So I can understand why Matty went into Gallade here, as Aki's going to go into his Aero. And it has an interesting spot. Aero can come into rocks once more after this, so he might just opt to attack what's in front of him. I don't think Matty has a ton of reasons to preserve this Gallade, unless he really wants it to get a close combat off versus the Selly. But considering he's got Sunfisk and Rotom in the back, he might just go hard Fisk here and click T-Wave. I think T-Wave is a fine play if he does want to make that. Aki might make the Ice Fang read, but I think clicking Edge is probably his better play if he does want to make a read, because Rotom is just as solid a switch in to this Gallade here. Yeah, definitely rough for Aki there. I think that Clef could have been pretty pivotal in this, but yeah, really solid prep from both these guys. I know I know Aki was bringing heat, but yeah, he still built a really solid team, and Matty obviously building a really solid team himself. Yeah, I don't know who's thinking here, but they're taking their time. Matty probably contemplating whether he wants to go hard into one of his defensive mons, but he does end up just sacking off his Gallade to the arrow, yeah, this is interesting. He could just go out into one of his defensive mons, but he could just easily go into Katana and click Sacred Sword. I think that's a better play, honestly. That guarantees damage off on the Celesteela, or it guarantees the kill on this arrow. And yeah, I don't see why he wouldn't just go out into that. Cut is ridiculously strong, and that would pretty much guarantee him the win, I believe. As yeah, Selly without lefties is just going to get whittled too much, and it's just hard checked by the Fisk with the Sugar Berry. So this is looking kind of over for my boy Aki, but yeah, Matty definitely played this well. Just thinking, if he didn't, like, if he hadn't had flinched the Clef, and Clef had got that damage off with the Moonblast, he would have dropped to Shadow Ball, so he probably wouldn't have brought his Gallade in that turn and to take out to revenge the Frost, as he probably would have gone out into either his Rotom or his Stunfisk, which would have been pretty interesting, because yeah, Aki could have played around that a little bit. He could have, you know, gone into the Clef as a sack, assuming the Clef was still around at that stage in the match, which probably would have been, because he would have got the initial Moonblast off, and then probably could have Moonlighted up the second turn, the turn that Aki went into Lele. So he does just fire off the edge, as the Rotom is going to get its Citrus, and he's just going to take him out with the Volt Switch. So defensive Rotom really taking that hit well, as Fisk is going to come out here. Big Stunfisk, and this is going to be tough for Aki, because obviously this thing is Sugar Berry, and he's not like ground him. But you know, in saying that, this is weakness policy Celesteela, so I think his best, Aki's best play is to just go for the Autotomize here, expecting the T-Bolt. But from Matty's perspective, he kind of has to T-Wave here, because if he does T-Bolt, it won't kill the Celesteela, and his Celesteela could get to +2 attack, which could be pretty rough if he crits him through the Sugar Berry at +2. So I think yeah, Matty's play is definitely the T-Wave here. Yeah, this Stunfisk is very defensive. So we see oh, he actually T-Bolts, and he gets a crit, which doesn't really matter because T-Bolt would have 2-carried anyway. So the only way I think I can see this is if he, oh, he's not even Shuko, he must have changed it. So right there, I actually think I don't know if Aki could have won with a crit there, because Rotom was pretty healthy, and the coverage that Selly had was Acro, Flamethrower, and Earthquake. So I don't think a +2 fully powered Acro would have killed Rotom from about 50 or whatever it would have been at after Rocks. So I do believe Aki had that game, sorry, Matty had that game at that stage in the match in the bag, even with a crit. So I could be wrong, but I believe that's the case, and I think Scarf Cart may even outspeed Selly at +2, but I could be wrong there. Aki may have EV'd it to outspeed Scarf Cart there. So yeah, that was a very interesting game for round 1 of the ITL playoffs. Very exciting to see these two great players go head to head. You don't often see like guys like Aki and Matty facing round 1 in playoffs. It's pretty unheard of. So yeah, this is definitely a first for the ITL. So I hope you guys did enjoy. Definitely congrats to both players for making it to playoffs and yeah, having such a great season. I know Aki wasn't the biggest fan of his team, but I think he used it well despite being uncomfortable with a few mons on the squad, and obviously Matty's had a great season with his team so far. So definitely go and check out their respective videos on this match. I'm sure they'll be uploading their perspectives, and yeah, go and listen to them because they've got a lot more insight into their own teams than I do. Obviously, I just received the teams in a paste, so go check those out. Go check out the channel. Hope you guys did enjoy. Drop a like and tell me what you guys thought of the match in the comments, and I'll catch you guys next time.